When you're trying to decide whether a high-end laptop is worth the price tag, the first thing that comes up is the fear of getting something that looks great on paper but falls short in everyday use. You've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through specs, watching hype videos, and wondering if you'll end up with a machine that's great for one game and a nightmare for the rest of your workflow. The goal of this review is to walk through what the MSI Vector 16HX really delivers day to day, where it shines, and where it might leave you wishing you'd spent the extra cash elsewhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the past few weeks pulling this laptop into a typical gaming setup, using it for a mix of AAA titles, video editing sessions, and even a few remote work days, so you'll get a grounded view rather than a laundry list of specs. First off, the core of any gaming laptop is the processor-GPU combo. The Vector 16 packs an AMD Ryzen 9 8940HX, a 16-core, 32-thread chip that can boost up to 5.3 GHz, paired with NVIDIA's latest RTX 5070 Ti with 12 GB of GDDR7. On paper this looks like a recipe for future-proof performance, and in real use it mostly delivers. In demanding titles like Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring, the frame rates hover comfortably in the 7090 frames per second range on the native 25601600 display, even with ray tracing toggled on medium settings. That's a solid step up from a typical 1080p 144Hz laptop, and it means you can push higher graphical fidelity without constantly tweaking settings. But the power comes with a trade-off. The 16-core CPU draws a noticeable amount of power under load, and that translates into heat that can become noticeable after an hour or two of intense gaming. The cooling system does a respectable job. Fans spin up and keep the GPU temps in the low 80 SC, but the chassis will get warm to the touch under the palm rests. If you plan on marathon sessions in a small room, you'll want to make sure your desk has a little airflow or consider an external cooling pad. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a factor that many buyers overlook when they only see the specs. One area where the Vector really differentiates itself is the display. The 16-inch QHD Plus IPS panel offers a 2560x1600 resolution and a 240 Hz refresh rate, which is unusual for a laptop in this price bracket. In fast-paced shooters like Valorant and Apex Legends, the high refresh rate delivers buttery smooth motion, letting you track enemies with less motion blur. In content creation tasks, the extra vertical real estate helps when you're editing timelines in Adobe Premiere or scrolling through multiple windows. The color accuracy is decent out of the box for a gaming screen, but if you need color-critical work, you'll want to calibrate it. It's a win for gamers who also edit video or do graphic design on the side. Now, let's talk memory and storage. 16 GB of DDR5 RAM sounds like a lot, but with the current trend of games using more memory for textures and background processes, you might find yourself bumping the limit when you keep multiple heavy applications open. I found that after opening the game client, Discord, a web browser with several tabs, and Photoshop simultaneously, the system started nudging a few background apps out of RAM, causing a slight stutter that the OS managed by swapping to the SSD. Speaking of storage, the 1TB PCIe SSD provides ample space for a solid library of games, and the read/write speeds are fast enough that load times are barely noticeable. However, if you plan to store a massive 4K video archive, you'll likely need an external drive eventually. The keyboard gets a lot of buzz because of its 24-zone RGB system, but the practical side is the inclusion of the dedicated Copilot key that brings up a macro overlay. For gamers who rely on complex keybinds in titles like Rainbow Six Siege or for streamers who want quick macro access, this is a nice convenience. The key travel feels solid and the backlight is adjustable per zone, so you can keep it subtle for a late-night session or go all out for a stream overlay. However, the keyboard doesn't have a number pad, which isn't a problem for most gamers but might be a nuisance if you do a lot of spreadsheet work on the laptop. Connectivity-wise, the inclusion of Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4 means you'll have the latest wireless speeds, though in practice you're limited by your router's capabilities. I tested a 2.4 gigabits per second connection on a Wi-Fi 6E router and saw speeds close to the advertised maximum, which translates to smoother cloud gaming sessions and faster download times for large game patches. The port selection includes a mix of USB-C, HDMI, and a full-size Ethernet port, which gives you flexibility whether you're connecting to an external monitor or tethering via LAN for a stable connection during competitive play. Who should consider this machine? If you are a gamer who wants to run the latest titles at high settings on a